won't be alone. And we're going to have a much safer world when it's wrapped up. It'll be wrapped up soon. We're going to have a much safer world.
That was President Trump sounding off as Operation Epic Fury enters week 3, with the U.S. military delivering one major blow after another to Iran's military capabilities and dismantling the terror regime's missile production. U.S. forces also pounding Karg Island, that's Iran's main oil hub, as President Trump looks to form a coalition of allies to help secure the Strait of Hormuz.
We attacked Karg Island and knocked it literally, destroyed everything on the island except for the area where the oil is. I call it the pipes. We left the pipes. I've just known that for a long period of time, just like I knew about the Strait, that it would be a weapon, which I predicted a long time ago, predicted all of this stuff. He strongly encouraged other nations whose economies depend on the Strait for blood. I mean, numerous countries have told me they're on the way. Some are very enthusiastic about it, and some aren't.
The president was also commenting on Iran's new supreme leader amid some pretty interesting reports. The New York Post claims that President Trump had a priceless reaction after U.S. intelligence told him that the new Ayatollah is probably gay and that his late father didn't think he was the right fit for the family business. But the president isn't even sure if the new guy is alive. Watch.
They're saying that he lost his leg, one leg, and he's, been hurt very badly. Other people are saying he's dead. Nobody's saying he's 100% healthy. And he hasn't spoken because the Ayatollah would sit and he'd spew hate from a form of a throne. Not as nice as a throne. I like the English throne much better. But it was a fancy chair.
And the liberal media's latest hot take, apparently America is no better than Iran, and Epic Fury is racist as well.
It takes a certain amount of arrogance, and I'm also going to say it, a bit of racism, to constantly talk about people like they are savages. That is a word that we have heard Hegseth use.
Our regime has secret police. They have secret police. Our regime is oppressing women. We're marginally better. And we're doing it for Christianity. They're doing it for Islam, right?
I don't think Hitler was selling merch.
No.
Hitler was very serious on his awful project.
Joey, I kind of wanted to ask you to give us your take on the situation with the military at the moment, but do you want to comment on the last bit there first?
Yeah, who is he even comparing to Hitler? We don't know anymore because it's just going full circle. We have no idea. I mean, Hitler was a vegetarian, so we're going to hate vegetarians now too. I don't know. I don't know why they sit there. Listen, by all intents and purposes, if predominantly white countries did the things that Iran did, I think we'd have no problem bombing the hell out of them too. I mean, that's it. It's not about who the countries are. Look at who the allies are. I mean, we're working with pretty much every other Middle Eastern country that's saying this is a problem. I get really upset when we get into this. It's okay to question why now. It's okay to question how necessary was it. I don't mind that. I don't mind investigations on it. I want people to ask questions. I fought those 2 never-ending wars. If this is over in a couple of weeks, and that's my hope, and that's what they say, then I think it makes a lot of sense. But when you have Democrats sit there and use the 13 that have died as their justification for not just opposing this, but working hard to work against it, it makes me want to grind my teeth. I mean, we've lost 13 souls. The last time we lost 13 souls was surrendering Afghanistan. And if you didn't have anything to say with a botched operation, understand that we didn't have a plan to leave Afghanistan. We saw the Taliban coming and said, you know what? We can't stop them. So we're just going to get out of there as fast as we can. We don't really have a plan for it. We're going to surrender Bagram. We're going to surrender every strategic advantage we have. And we're going to leave Marines and soldiers outside the perimeter at gates as sitting ducks until enough of them died that it's a problem. And if you didn't have any criticism, if you weren't calling for investigations and hearings and impeachment over that, but you are now on an offensive operation where 13 souls have died, bombing Iran into the Stone Age, taking away a foe and their capability to kill us and hurt us, then you're intellectually dishonest and you're dishonoring the service and sacrifice of both of those groups of heroes. And that's what bothers me so bad about where this is right now. I replayed something Chuck Schumer, his speech on the floor, and just this idea that they don't understand that right now the job is to cheer for our troops to win and win swiftly, and then have all your hearings and all your investigations and go raise your money and all your stump speeches.
They're definitely not doing that. I mean, on the first day, Hakeem Jeffries was like, well, this is a failure. Kayleigh, but what did you think of, you can comment on whatever you want, but I would love your thought about when you have that clip that we played at the end where they said that the United States is suppressing women just as much as they are, but we're doing it in the name of Christianity.
What are they talking about? Suppressing women like the Iranian soccer team who the reporting now is that they were goaded into, taking this asylum claim, and then as it turns out, that was not an authentic endeavor. It was a staffer luring them in, and then these women's families were threatened. What do you mean? That's not happening here in the United States. Mm-hmm. They love this Handmaid's Tale narrative. They push it. It's just simply not the case. We have First Amendment rights in this country. We have all of the freedoms and protections of the Constitution, just like our male counterparts. But that's lost upon the left and these insane commentators. I do want to emphasize the importance of this cargo operation that took place. It is a huge deal. President Trump, going back to 1988, has spoken about it. He said they've been beating us psychologically, speaking of Iran, making us look like a bunch of fools. One bullet shot at one of our men on our ships, and I'd do a number on Karg Island. I'd go in and take it. Here we are, 1988. That's the year I was born. Mm-hmm. And yet here we are, President Trump is taking this action that he contemplated for the last 37 years. It's incredible. It's a huge operation. 100 Iranian ships sunk altogether now, 6,000 combat fights, and then 50,000 U.S. service members deployed overseas. And now we're looking at the Achilles heel of Iran. That's Karg, which Carter contemplated taking, never did it, but now you have President Trump. I just want to take one moment to acknowledge the latest 6 service members who died overseas. There's some heartbreaking stories. John Kleiner, he had 7-month-old twins. He had a 2-year-old son. And then you look over at Ashley Pruitt, a 3-year-old child. She was a mother and she lost her life. These are courageous. They are heroes. They are the best among us. And to the 13 who have lost their life, thank you from the bottom of my heart. We honor your sacrifice today and every day.
Harold, thoughts on where we are, even if you maybe you want to touch on the economics, if you...
Well, first off, it's good to be with everybody. And I would say, first off, I know we all shared my prayers of Susie Walls and her family for their more belief and more strength and more courage, and obviously to a full recovery for her. I'd say a couple things. I don't think there's any doubt we have laid waste to, the United States and our incredible military has laid waste to virtually, I got to think, the traditional military infrastructure of Iran has been, if not depleted, pretty much devastated in such ways that it will be hard to reconstruct immediately. One thing they do still have, according to some experts, is access to the drones, and we've got to figure out our counter-drone technology and measures will only get better as we have to deal with this for a while, because it makes it, when you think about it, our stance, when the president says we're going to end this, the question becomes, when do the Iranians, to what extent will they have some say in when we end it? 2, the newsy thing for me, maybe I had just not seen it, the president called it a war for the first time. He was asked why he made delay. He was going to go to China at the end of the month, and he said, I want to be here for the war. I've always thought it was the case, and I'm glad that we're on the same page. I think there are 3 questions that remain, and I would agree with everybody here. All the hearings Democrats we want to hold, Joey's right, hold after, or at least not now. I mean, if we find ourselves in a more prolonged posture position, I can understand several months from now, and even perhaps another vote. But this is not the time. We need to be supporting our troops, and for that matter, opening the Department of Homeland Security at the same time. But I think 3 questions come to my mind. Will we commit troops? I heard the president, I heard him this morning. Joey and I were talking to Groom. I felt like he'd been on TV 3 or 4 times today. I was confusing this morning on Fox and Friends with the two instances he came on later today. And I'm glad he answered a lot of the questions. But will we commit troops to uncover and or recover the uranium? I think in the immediate sense, can we build a coalition to help us in the Strait of Hormuz to, whether it's escorting tankers or, for that matter, helping in other ways to ensure that we get a better passage of infrastructure there, including oil, which fertilizer and other things come from as well. And where are we on regime change? I was a little unnerved to hear, I hope the reporting was wrong, that the president had some sort of response when learning that the this new leader in Iran may have a sexual orientation different than his. The key is we have to beat these guys. I don't care if his sexual orientation is the same or not. But where are we on regime change? And I think a number of Americans, and for that matter, policymakers and politicians are probably curious about that issue as well. But then I don't have a totally different perspective. I think that we need to be supportive of our troops, and I don't think it's unusual for serious and perhaps hard questions to be asked of the president. And he answered a lot of them over seemed like the 6 hours he was on TV today.
Greg, you have notes, you have all of these things here. I don't even know where to go because we've kind of talked about the media.
This new Ayatollah is gay. All right, so this explains why Kamala Harris did not choose him as vice president. Because we weren't ready to have a gay Ayatollah. I'm not ready. I know that I'm not ready. I'm not ready. Permission, Joey, to make a joke about a lost limb.
Oh, please do.
All right, so this prime minister, he's impotent, he's disfigured, he's in a coma, he lost his leg. When he wakes up, he's going to be hopping mad.
Man, we've got so much in common.
1 to 10?
10.
Okay, thanks. I do. Yeah, Kaylee is right. It's like the people that were always saying America would be the Handmaid's Tale, this dystopian fantasy of a totalitarian theocracy that subjugates women, are now embracing the actual reality, Iran, which is a totalitarian theocracy that subjugates women. And I do love the fact that, like, how, no offense, Harold, how Democrats are really sticklers about language. They certainly can identify a war, but try to pin them on the definition of a woman. Like, oh, I know what a war is. Why would you say war? Okay, well, what you say what a woman is first, and then we'll work on war.
I can tell you.
I know. Well, you're different. You're a normal human being. Also, you listen to like Joy Reid, and she goes, well, there is Islamic and we're Christian. Well, there's a difference. We don't separate the world into believer and non-believer. We separate people by their behavior. They don't, which is why they can torment non-believers, because the behavior is okay. The accusations of Trump being manipulated by Israel, that accusation should go away once and for all. Kayla, you brought this up. He was talking about the Iranian threat back in the 1980s, and he kept talking about it. He was talking about it constantly. I don't think he was, he had Jerry Seinfeld on the line telling him what to say. All right. This is why Trump has resisted every label that you give him. He's not a hawk. He's not a dove. He just looks at risk and reward and incentives and disincentives because he's a businessman. This is something that hawks and doves, interventionists, isolationists, libertarians, this is their flaw. If you are imprisoned by an ideology, the adversary knows how to play you. They can see it. It's why they can't play Trump, because one minute he's a dove, the next minute he's a hawk. It's because he's none of the above. He's simply just Trump.
All right. Everyone, well done.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.